Maybe it's because I'm getting older, but I really miss the 80s and 90s. It wasn't perfect overall, but I think people just seemed happier. So let's talk about what was so awesome about those two totally rad decades. So, the first thing I really miss is people getting together in person more. I know people still get together nowadays, but it just seemed like we did it more often back then, just to go to the mall or play cards or board games, watch a movie together. Also, people knew you by name more and you could build relationships more because you were going in person to places like the bank. I know it's more convenient today, but you can't really build a relationship with an app. And as a side note, have you noticed that kids don't really trick or treat like they used to? When I was a kid, it was a big deal. We would talk about it weeks in advance about our costumes and which neighborhoods handed out the best candy. But now I don't see that as much, and they may just go to their neighbors and that's it, or their school. The last time I saw a lot of kids out there trick or treating was at least 10 years ago. The next thing I really miss are malls. I know they're a symbol of overconsumption, but there was just something magical about the mall. Meeting up with your friends, going to the food court, walking around the stores, checking out the latest fashions, things like that. Now, I know malls still exist, but a lot of them have closed down. Where I live, there are two malls that are very popular, and it warms my little Gen X heart to see that. The other thing I miss is people being present in their interactions. People used to focus on who they were talking to and what they were doing more. Now, when you meet up with people, half the time they're looking at their phone. I remember about 5 to 10 years ago meeting up with a group of friends, and I looked around the table, and every single one of them, except me, were looking at their phones. They were texting, posting on social media, and I remember thinking, why are we even here if you're just going to spend the entire time looking at your phone? The next thing I miss are actual phone calls. I miss talking to people. I don't understand this obsession with texting. It is so slow. I understand if you're out in public because no one wants to hear your conversation, but if it's going to be this long back and forth or this long description and you're in a private space and it's not noisy, pick up the phone and call. Otherwise, you might as well go back to the rotary phones. It would be faster. The next thing I miss is just having better service overall. Back in the 80s and 90s, it seemed like the salespeople really knew what they were doing and they were really attentive and helpful. I've actually seen videos out there floating about how much worse service has become. There are also a lot of free services that have mostly disappeared, like pumping your gas for you, measuring your feet at the shoe store, taking your groceries out to the car, and free makeovers at the makeup counter. Compare that to now when you're encouraged to scan your own groceries as if you work there. I just want to shout, are we getting paid for this? The next thing I miss is that anticipation of a movie coming out. There was nothing better than getting together with friends or family and going to see some blockbuster movie. And the movie would have a good story a lot of times, unlike a lot of the movies from the past 5 to 10 years, where they were more concerned about shoving a certain message down our throats. And there was still that social aspect of going to the movies because, again, you would meet up with your friends and family and go see the movie, and then you would talk about it afterwards. So there was all this talking and going back and forth and debating and social interaction versus a lot of us watching movies at home through streaming services, and then we just watch it, by ourselves or with our partners or something, and we don't invite friends over to watch movies or go to the movies together. So there's another activity where it's just become more isolated. And all of this takes away the excitement of it because of all the streaming services or all of these movies coming out all the time and TV shows and all of that. So it used to be more of an event, and now it's just kind of an everyday occurrence. The other thing I miss is fun music and MTV. So the 80s was filled with light and fun music, and that's back when MTV played music videos all the time. And I remember being mesmerized by it. I would sit there and watch for hours, watch Cyndi Lauper and Madonna and Michael Jackson and Prince and all these other artists, the Police. And it just had a more lightness about it. Think of Cyndi Lauper's song, Girls Just Want to Have Fun, things like that. And then we had the 90s, which did get kind of darker with grunge, but we still had a lot of lighter songs that came out of that decade, like Steal My Sunshine and the Barbie Girls song. Okay, the next thing I miss are bookstores. Now, I know they still exist, but there were a lot more back then. So just going in and looking at all the books and having a book in your hand, it's a different feeling than just reading a book on a tablet. Now in my area, we have a couple bookstores and I still go in there and I love it. It's a good way to discover new books. Now I know we can buy from Amazon, but we shouldn't buy everything from Amazon. Competition is good for us and for the economy. The other thing I miss is the taste of food. Fruits and vegetables always had more flavor back in the 80s and 90s. Today you can still get some that are good, but you never know. It's a crapshoot. Sometimes they taste like chewable air, like nothing. And while I'm on the subject of food, what happened to hairnets? I've been seeing a lot of cooks in restaurants not wearing hairnets. It's like, dude, I don't want a side of hair with my fries. The next thing I miss, and it's a big one, it's how affordable life used to be. I have a stat here that kind of tells us a lot about the difference between the 80s and today. In 1985, it took 3.5 times your income to purchase a home. Now it takes about 5 times your income. I'm probably going to do a whole video on this topic, so that's all I'll say about this today. But we all know how expensive things have become. We remember, and we're not stupid. Anyway, if you don't want to miss that video, be sure to subscribe. The next one I miss is people not having to be connected to work 24/7. Back in the day when you left work, that was it. You were done for the day, and it was really hard to track you down after that until pagers came out, of course. But now, these days, you're expected to respond to messages quickly, even at dinner time. And it also means that your boss can email you at midnight and say, I know it's late, but where's my report? And related to all of that, cell phones and such, is privacy. I really miss the days when you could have a private conversation and there wasn't some device listening to you. Who would have imagined back then that we would be carrying around these devices that listen to us 24/7? Then that information is gathered up and sold, and then there are data breaches and all of this stuff. It's just such a violation of our human rights. Privacy used to be a thing. So that is one thing I definitely miss. And if I want to have an actual private conversation with someone, I literally go into a room with no devices, including TVs, refrigerators, and all of that. Like, not even going to be around anything electronic. And if you want your thoughts to be private, just go old school and get a notebook and pen. The other thing I miss is not having to be a tech genius to operate basic things like a phone or a coffee maker, even though I love my coffee maker. Cars have become more complicated too. They're basically electronics on wheels. Even your refrigerator needs a 20-page manual to explain everything that it can do. And by the way, it's spying on you as well. The other thing I really miss is a lack of social media. I know there's some value to social media. It can help businesses, you can connect with friends and things like that. But it really does just seem like an extension of high school. People are going on there and bragging about how much money they have and the new car they bought and all this stuff, just so they can feel better about themselves. It also is showcasing a whole other level of insanity. When I was younger, the weirdos kept to themselves. Now they're on TikTok. There are a lot of things I miss about both of those decades, like family members who have passed away. And if I could snap my fingers and go back to either of those times, I would, paper maps and all. Well, that's it for today. Let me know in the comments what you miss about the 80s and 90s, and I hope you'll come back. In the meantime, take care.